All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Today we're going to be talking about voting.
Ooh.
Exciting. It is exciting. And back in high school, we all learned about that, ideal citizen in social studies class.
Wow.
The one that, weighs all the facts and figures and makes, the perfectly logical choice.
The rational voter.
Yes, exactly. Turns out that might be more of a myth than, a reality.
That's right.
And thankfully, we have Bryan Caplan's book, The Myth of the Rational Voter, which kind of digs into all of this. So that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today.
Cool.
So, why do people sometimes vote against their own interests?
I'm ready.
Let's get into it. So Caplan talks about these 4 major biases that can, really skew how we vote in elections.
Sure.
But for this deep dive, we are going beyond those 4 major biases.
Even more.
To unearth some even more hidden influences.
Okay, I like it.
So tell me a little bit about some of those hidden influences.
Well, one of the things that Kaplan really gets at is this idea that sometimes our deeply held beliefs, especially about things like fairness and social justice, they can actually lead us to support policies that might actually have negative economic impacts on us.
Oh, so even if you're trying to help people,
right,
the way that you're going about it might actually...
It might backfire.
Backfire, yeah, and hurt the people that you're trying to help.
Exactly, raising the minimum wage. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Helping those low-income workers, of course, sounds like a good idea. But if it leads to, employers having to lay off workers, and then there's fewer jobs overall.
Right.
It's that whole unintended consequences thing.
Wow. Yeah, that is a really tough one.
So we've got that. And then, another thing that I always think about is this idea of lobbying and campaign contributions.
Sure.
It's all these special interest groups are kind of lurking in the shadows.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it lurking in the shadows as much as, they're players in the game.
They're players in the game.
Okay. And they're trying to, advocate for their particular interests.
Right. So give me an example of how that might actually play out, in a way that would affect our listeners.
Sure. Well, think about school funding. You've got groups that are advocating for, more money for arts programs,
To music programs.
Yeah, exactly. Or, STEM education is a big one these days.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, of course, you've got, athletics.
Right.
So all of these different groups, they're all vying for their slice of the pie, and they're trying to, persuade voters and policymakers that, their particular priorities are the most important.
Oh, so it's almost like a competition.
In a way. Yeah, for sure.
To see who can get the most attention and the most resources.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these special interest groups kind of, vying for position. And then what about the media? Does the news that we consume, does that actually impact how we vote? Or are we all too smart for that?
Well, it's tricky because I think we all like to think that we're, discerning consumers of information and we can see through the bias and all that.
Right.
But the reality is that we all have our own biases going in, and media outlets often, cater to those biases.
Well,
so, they might only present one side of a story or frame an issue in a way that favors a particular viewpoint.
right.
And that can really shape how we perceive, candidates and policies, even if we don't realize it's happening,
And it's not even just traditional news anymore.
Yeah.
We have social media.
That's right. It's huge. Yeah.
Which is it's a whole other can of worms.
Exactly. It creates those echo chambers,
Yeah.
where we just see information that already aligns with our existing beliefs. And so it's really hard to break out of that and consider alternative perspectives.
So are we all doomed?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I think the first step is just being aware of these things, recognizing that, the media we consume, the information we're exposed to it, can have a really powerful impact on how we view the world.
So it's step 1, awareness.
Exactly.
Okay, good. I like it.
And thinking about all of this, it's sometimes I catch myself making decisions based on gut feelings more than logic and reasoning.
Sure.
So does that play into voting too?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, emotions are powerful.
Yeah.
Whether we like to admit it or not, they play a huge role in all of our decision making, and voting is no exception.
So you might see a candidate and they just have this charisma about them.
Exactly, that it factor.
Even if you don't agree with them on policy, you're still drawn to them.
Right, you just feel like you connect with them on some level.
Yeah.
And that can be really powerful.
Interesting.
So, okay, we've got all these factors pulling us in all these different directions.
Yeah.
What can we actually do about it?
Right. Well, Caplan actually offers some really concrete advice. And a lot of it, I think, is especially relevant to young people.
Okay, I like that.
So, first and foremost, he really emphasizes, strong voter education,
Okay.
learning how to think critically, how to evaluate sources, how to spot bias. Those are essential skills.
So almost like media literacy 101.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
But like specifically targeted towards, voting and elections and stuff.
Right.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah,
So media literacy and then...
Well, and then also understanding basic economics.
Okay.
I think that's really crucial because so many of the issues that we vote on,
Right.
they have, economic implications, whether it's, taxes or student loans or the job market,
These are things that are going to directly affect our listeners.
Exactly. And so, being informed about, the potential consequences of different policies, I think is really, really important.
Right. And we can't forget about those special interest groups.
Of course not.
So what do we do about that?
Well, awareness is key, right?
Yeah.
Just being aware of, who's trying to influence you and why.
Uh-huh.
That's the first step in resisting manipulation.
Okay.
And, Caplan, he's a big proponent of youth activism.
Oh, I like that.
And media literacy,
So getting involved in
Getting involved, speaking out,
being informed.
Exactly.
I like it.
So this is all fantastic information, and I really appreciate you breaking all this down for us.
My pleasure.
But I have a feeling we've just, scratched the surface here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Caplan's work is fantastic, but there's got to be more.
Right. I mean, we haven't even talked about things like, cultural and social influences, the
Right.
power of conformity,
Uh-huh.
all those cognitive biases, that we all fall prey to.
Right.
And then, of course, the role of political parties in, shaping our choices.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
It is.
Like every time you think you've got it figured out.
There's another layer underneath.
That's right.
Well, a huge thank you to you for illuminating all of this for us.
Happy to be here.
And to all of you listening, thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive.
Now that you know just how complex this whole voting thing can be, what steps are you going to take to be more informed? How are you going to make sure that your vote truly reflects your values and your understanding of the issues? Because ultimately the future really is in your hands. So go out there and make your voice heard.
Until next time.